up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to this special episode of Outside the Trenches. I'm BJ Kissel, joined by an old friend and somebody that I've known for a very, very long time now, an ESPN NFL draft analyst, Matt Miller. Matt, how goes it, my man?
Well, you just called me old, so I'm not sure, right? God,
we are old.
We are old. I was trying to think the other day how long we've actually known each other. It's probably a decade now. So yeah. We are old indeed. And I'm still getting used to, this is not I know I'm known for the humble brag. This isn't one. I'm still getting used to the letters after when people say my name. They've changed, right? It used to be for a decade, it was Bleacher Report. Now it's ESPN. So I'm still, like when you left the Chiefs, I'm sure it sounded different to you. Anytime someone, formally introduced you, it's like, oh, BJ Kissel, KC Sportsnet. It's not BJ Kissel, Kansas City Chiefs. It's an adjustment period, but long way to say I'm doing great, and it's good to be on with you.
I'm sure you run into this. I still run into people who still think I work for the Chiefs. Like they just kind of recognize me. I'm sure it'll be the same with you when you go. And I'm excited about the show because I want to talk to you about the Combine. I didn't get a chance to go. I didn't get a chance to go to Prime with you for the first time. It seems like in a very long time. But
you missed out.
I want to talk about I want to talk about that. I want to talk about Russell Wilson coming in the division. I want to talk about Tyrann Mathieu, Chiefs free agency, all that stuff, because I know you're not too far outside of Kansas City. I got your finger on the pulse of everything. And then I want to talk a little bit about Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State. We actually had plugged your NFL or your mock draft pick. We had talked about it last night on our live show, but no problem. But it's funny. And I had texted you this the other day and I wasn't going to bring this up, but we've known each other a decade now. We figured out. It's really cool for me to see the tweets and then like the shots. I'm sitting, at the Kingdom Bar down the street from my house, and I look up and I see you on TV, and I'd always take pictures. But seeing you next to Mel Kiper, just because of your history and how you got started and kind of knowing the back side of that, like it's just cool for me personally to see where you're at. And I've seen you on TV and like all that stuff, but next to Mel Kiper, because I know that was your guy. It's just really cool for me if somebody that's watched you kind of blossom and kind of create your own way in this space.
It's weird for me. It's really weird for me. And I think, a lot of people unfortunately don't get to know, guys like Mel or Todd McShay or Field Yates, and they've been amazing, to me over the last year. And so you get to the point where you consider them your friend, or even Adam Schefter has been incredibly helpful over the last years. I've just tried to, ESPN's a huge company, right? So just trying to kind of figure out the dynamics there. It's been amazing. And it gets weird for me, and I hope a lot of your readers and viewers, I feel like they know me, from us doing stuff together over the years and being somewhat local, is that it really is a dream come true. And I think about that every day. It's like it's very hard to have a bad day at work when you get to wake up and from the time I was 6 years old, this is what I wanted to do and be. And it's a much longer show at some point to walk through, what it kind of took to get to that point. And my big thing, and this about me, is I don't consider myself done yet. This isn't the peak of the mountain. I'm 38. I'm still pretty young for this industry. So hopefully there's still a lot of work left to be done.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure that anybody listening, because obviously they listen to the show, they know that you've been interviewing you for a decade, and literally you were the one who brought me over to Bleacher Report. We talked about this. You brought me over to Bleacher Report. You vouched for me. It led to the Rob Huron story, and I've told this about 1 billion times, and that story helped me get that Chiefs job. So when people hear us talking about this and they think it's humble brag of an ESPN guy and a former Chiefs guy, we're two guys that I was blogging, needed an opportunity. You had just started. You were doing this not quite full time. You had different things going on. Yeah. We've known each other a long time throughout this business. So I'm not looking at you as the ESPN guy. I'm looking at the guy that our wife and I went down to Joplin, hung out with you on your birthday, and have watched you grind your ass off.
Through 2 wives. That's how long we've known each other, right? You know me longer than my son's 8. So we've known each other a long time. And it goes both ways. I've seen, you work your ass off from being, probably a free writer at SB Nation to Bleacher Report to the Chiefs to now doing your own thing. So a lot of mutual admiration here.
Nobody wants to hear us wax poetic on each other. If they do, we can do a whole show about that, because I have so much respect for people, and it's not just us. Anybody who goes through this business that figures out a way to make it in a non-traditional way. You got to love what you do. It's not about trying to get something out of it. That's the advice to anybody. If you're trying to do media with the goal of getting something out of it, it's never going to work for you because of the amount of time, effort, and just trial and error you have to go through. But another time.
one more thing. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
I'm going to
go
keep you
for
on
it.
this. One thing I tell people all the time is like, for you, like you said, I vouched for you, and
Mhm.
that mattered at Bleacher Report. Wouldn't have mattered if you couldn't write, you know, or like my younger brother Mello. What he was teaching, didn't really like it, and was working part time at Bleacher Report. And he's like, "Hey, I want to move into media full time." I can vouch for him all day, but if he's not good, it doesn't matter, right? And so I
Um,
think that's where a lot of it comes from is when you see people that are non-traditional, right? Didn't go to journalism school, right? None of those things. It's just you just kind of work your tail off to get where you're at.
Absolutely. That, like I said, we'll do another show later into the offseason. We get really into the depths of the
Right.
offseason. We can
Yeah,
talk about this.
4 hour show.
I want to ask about the combine. It was in the headlines. There's a lot going on, a lot of chatter about moving the combine to somewhere else. And somebody who's been at the combine for a long time and sees the value in it, and both what you see on TV, but then also what goes on behind the scenes in Indy. Just what are your initial thoughts, and what were your takeaways from the combine this year, just from a high level?
Yeah, from a high level, it was tough this year. I'm going to be honest with you. We had a lot of players not participate. I mean, record number of players did not participate. We didn't have a single running back do their agilities, right? They didn't do short shuttle. They didn't do three cone. It's like, what is going on here? The other side of it is, and I feel I'm very conflicted about this because I have been in this industry a long time, and the value of the combine, you guys hear this all the time, it's medicals, it's interviews, then it's the
Yep.
workouts, right? But being someone in this industry, especially now, someone who's front facing in this industry, I directly benefit from the combine being on TV and more people being interested in the NFL draft, right? So you're kind of torn
Yep.
on this. I think that the NFL making the decision to put the combine in the primetime spotlight, you know, workouts in the evening, I think it has hurt the combine. Now,
Yep.
it's not a decision that necessarily has to be reversed, but I think the NFL needs to work with the NFS, which runs the combine. They need to work with players and agents and trainers and NFL personnel to figure out a better system. We can't have running backs not running agilities because they ran out of time. Like that's not acceptable. And so,
Yep.
yes, we understand you want the 40 in prime time, but there's got to be a better way, right? Whether that means starting it earlier so that it's, hey, yeah, at 7 o'clock Eastern time, these guys are on in their 40s, but they've done their agilities beforehand and you've taped it and you can run it, right? You can show it.
Yep.
But maybe, you know, make this an event where it's, you know, live to tape, as, you know, we love to say in this business where some of it's live, some of it's taped, and you can then cut that up and run it however you want. But something has to change, you know, to where the combine, the importance of it is to get those numbers for comparative analysis, is to get numbers for historical analysis, but also
Yep.
to understand who these players are as people, as football players, and their medical history. So something has to be adjusted. And I've even been told that the ratings weren't even that good this year. So hopefully
Hmm.
the NFL does look at it and say, all right, this event will live on TV from now on. Right.
Yeah.
That bridge has been crossed. But let's try to make it number one, a better show on TV. And then secondarily, let's make it a better event for the players. So they are incentivized to work out, whether that means paying them, which I know there's a big push for that, or finding other ways that, hey, let's make this a better day for you to where you're not on the field for 7 hours and then asked to run a short shuttle, which is just not good for anyone, right?
Yeah.
Especially when so much it hinges on that number that players are putting out.
Yeah. And I think you saw, for anyone who's on social media, spends any time on social, you saw a lot of trainers and a lot of people in this industry who spend,
Absolutely.
the better part of their lives getting players to be prepared to go do drills that are archaic, that could injure players, that don't seem to have a lot of value in an evaluation. But it's also, to your point, historical data that they have to compare to
Yep.
see their checkpoints. And I'm sure every team's a little bit different, and I've only been around one. But it will be interesting to see how that all happens. But good friend, I know you know Aaron Borgman as well, and every time the combine is brought up, I'm glad you brought up medicals, because from a casual fan perspective, it's not seen as important of the combine, and it's literally the only
The
point
absolute most important. And it's
of
the
the
reason it stayed
combine.
in Indy, right? And that's the other
Yeah,
big thing.
that's
And
why I
you're
don't
probably
think
going
it'll.
there is
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
it's like, oh, we're gonna move it to Dallas or move it to LA. And like selfishly, like cool, because this was the first time I've ever been in a combine and not froze my ass off, right? So it's like, yeah, let's move this somewhere warmer. But it doesn't really work logistically. Indy is very well equipped because of how close the hospitals are, and also because of
Mhm.
the fiber technology running into Lucas Oil Stadium, where you can do 335 MRIs in 4 days. Right, you can't do that
Yeah,
anywhere else. And a lot of people pop off and be like, "It's LA. They have all these hospitals." They do. They're not a 1 mile radius. right? They're spread out over 4 hours of traffic. So that's what I think what people miss is, yes, there are a lot of hospitals in Dallas. There are a lot of hospitals in Los Angeles. They're not centrally located like they are in Indianapolis, where you have that ability to run 335 MRIs in 4 days and all the other tests that go into it, while also being a walkable city. I mean, going from Indy, where you've been there, BJ, where there, and people, even if you've just visited there are 45 hotels in a 1 mile radius, right? And there's like a million restaurants and bars.
And they're all connected. I don't know who the city manager is of Indianapolis, but they should be in charge of like the world, because it is honestly logistically
like urban planning. Go to Indy. Yeah.
Perfect. It's exactly the way it should be.
Even for Chiefs fans who get so pissed off that, why don't we have a Super Bowl? You don't have enough hotels, number one, right? And even though Kansas City is somewhat walkable downtown, it's still very spread out, right? I mean, even from the stadium to downtown is pretty spread out. And so with Indy, everything being right there, it's great for the players. It's great for, us in the media. It's great for NFL teams. I will be sad if it moves because of that aspect of it. It's going to make everyone's job a little bit harder. And it's players are not going to want to sit in buses in LA traffic if they're being shuttled out to SoFi Stadium, where there is not the infrastructure right now to run something like the Combine.
But if you have this huge NFL Network campus and you want to bring everybody to LA and show it off for monetary reasons, to your point, I think the first question that's asked is, okay, how do we do 335 MRIs in 4 days without having all of these medical staffs having to be on buses and be all over the place? And then I think that's probably the big thing that has to get fixed, because on the other side, like the player interviews, like that, I mean, you could figure out other ways to do that. By the time you get to the Combine, at least from a media perspective, that's why I always liked some of the pre-draft things. I went to the Shrine Bowl this year, had some great access with our good friend Eric, went to the Senior Bowl for all the years before that. And they're not quite as coached up media-wise.
So you can talk to you get them a month before the Combine, you're getting real answers. Yeah, without a doubt.
And then you get to the Combine and it's like, hey, I'm just here to contribute. I'm like, you aren't even here yet. Like, you don't even know where you're going. Exactly. All right, let's move on, because the AFC West made headlines yesterday and I saw the tweets, and as obviously somebody's a diehard Chiefs fan, thinks Patrick Mahomes the greatest player in history. I know you probably agree, to put words in your mouth.
Maybe not yet in history. He's on his way.
He's had the greatest start. He's the trajectory better than anyone we've ever seen.
I'm with you. Now we're on the same page.
But you've got 4 legitimate, like, top half of the league quarterbacks, probably 3 in the top 10 pretty easily now within one division, with Russell Wilson coming over from Seattle. For somebody who's plugged in and knows a lot of the players involved and the agents and all the personalities and everything, what was your initial reaction when you see Aaron Rodgers is going back to Green Bay, and then Chiefs fans got about 30 minutes to get their shots off making fun of Denver for not having a quarterback? It comes out that they get Russell Wilson. So what was your reaction when you saw it?
Yeah, the Rodgers thing did not surprise me. I was telling people last week, one of my best friends is a Packers fan. He was freaking out. I was like, hey, Rodgers is staying. That's what everyone in Indy was saying. Like, everyone in Indy was like, Rodgers is going to stay. He just needs his ego petted a little bit. He'll be back, right? And it's like, okay. The Russell Wilson trade surprised me, because I heard Pete Carroll say, we have no interest in trading Russell Wilson. He said that on like Wednesday, right? And so here we are, not even a week later, and they traded Russell Wilson, which just goes to show you, like, don't believe a word those guys say in their press conferences, because it's all a lie. None of it matters. But it allows people to pop off on Twitter. So I'm excited, as someone who is, local. I go to a ton of Chiefs games. I'm excited to see Russell Wilson. I'm excited to see, the improvement of Justin Herbert. I'm excited to see what the Raiders put around Derek Carr. And, I live in a family full of Chiefs fans, despite not being one. I just love that competition, like being able to see, Buffalo play Kansas City twice this past year. Those were great games. We don't see Kansas City and Cincinnati. That was a great game. It's like, I selfishly just want more of those moments in Arrowhead, surrounded by friends and family, where you're getting an opportunity to see the best of the best. And I think for Chiefs fans, it's going to be a tougher road to that number 1 seed, or a tougher road to the playoffs. But you kind of want that. You want to go into the playoffs battle tested. If you make it out of that division, the road to the Super Bowl is, you're not going to face that many better teams. You could argue Buffalo, if you believe Cincinnati's got the goods to get back next year. But if you can make it out of the West, you're set up right now.
Yeah, I think I had the same reaction. I don't know if it's entitlement. I've tried wrestling this with myself. I'm not worried and it's not overconfidence and be like, well, the Chiefs are going to win anyway. It's just like, this is good football. And I still think we're the better team, and it's going to be awesome. Like, I don't want to go play a bunch of like 50-0. Like, that's just not fun to watch those. You get Russell Wilson.
A quarterback who thrives off of negativity almost, or doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And so I know that he's got posters somewhere, people saying Justin Herbert's better than him, or Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are better than him. And now just even that fight to win the West is going to be amazing. And I think I would look at it that way of, okay, 15 is going to be pissed. This is great news for us as a Chiefs fan. And, people get mad at me when I say this. I said it on, I think it was NFL Live last week. Chiefs need to give Pat more help. He needs more weapons. And people outside of Kansas City, I don't know how they misinterpret what I'm saying when I say this, but I think that's, you look at, okay, now Denver has some very good receivers and a quarterback that can actually get the ball to them. Kansas City has the greatest quarterback in the league, the greatest tight end in the league, one of the best receivers in the league. They still have to keep loading up. Cincinnati's got 3 great receivers. Denver's got, 3 very good receivers. Buffalo's got 2 really good ones. They're probably going to add another. So, it's time to be aggressive for Veach and Reed to give Pat more weapons.
I think it's fair to say, having both of us know Brett a little bit, that I don't think Brett's ever not going to have Patrick have what he needs, at least on paper. He's going to do his part. You got to stay healthy and all of those things. But I feel, Brett's not going to let Patrick want for talent on his side of the football.
Travis is 33 or will be 33 really soon. I think Tyreek just turned 29. These guys aren't young anymore. And so it's not even a knock about how great Travis and Tyreek are. It's that Pat is signed for 10 more years, right? It's like, you're not going to have Travis until he's 43. Like, you have to eventually find a replacement, and you're not going to have Tyreek till he's 39. You're eventually going to have to find a replacement. So it's just smart football to keep churning the roster, especially at skill positions where traditionally 30 years old is a mark for wide receivers. It's very rare for them to play well over age 30. So it's something that you have to start thinking about.
Curious to see how Tyreek's game translates as well, because you've been around him. Like, that guy's muscle, he's just wound so tight that even when he starts to lose a step, he's still going to be plenty. If
he lost a step, he's still the fastest guy in the NFL, right? So it's probably going to be okay.
A weapon. And I still think Travis's game, depending upon his body and how long he wants to play, I think his game translates well just for how he reads defenses, the leverages, and the way that he runs his routes and all that kind of stuff. We watched the Antonio Gates run out there, and I'm pretty sure I'm as fast as Antonio Gates was his last year in the league.
Tony Gonzalez at the end, But if you're smart at tight end, you can read zones, you can body, position yourself, and when you have the trust of the quarterback, it's all that matters. But I'll say this off topic. Like, late season, regular season, I was kind of like, man, Kelsey might be getting a little cooked. Like, I haven't really seen that many explosive plays. Here come the playoffs, and my dude just taking off, outrunning people. I'm like, well, glad I only said that take, to a couple people in the stadium and now to a podcast full of Chiefs fans. But it's always good when you start to think like, oh man, maybe this guy's slowing down, and then nope, they've still got it.
That's a tough SOB. That's what I'll say. All those guys to play through everything they do. But you bring up a great point in, those guys and the kind of the nucleus, especially on the offensive side, getting older. We saw the nucleus on the defensive side of the ball get older. They still have to make moves that seem like they're impending almost. We're just kind of waiting for them to happen. Tyrann Mathieu testing free agency. I can't think of a scenario in which a player has been allowed to go test free agency in this situation that then ended up going back to the same team. So I know that there's that thought out there, but on that side of the ball, you're looking at Tyrann Mathieu, Anthony Hitchens already released, Frank Clark's got his contract situation. There's a huge nucleus on that side of the ball, and the Chiefs are going to have some money. So you look at Brett Veach in this Chiefs offseason, and it's not, exaggerating to say that the potential dynasty and multiple Super Bowls and all those things for Patrick Mahomes kind of comes down in a lot of ways to the big moves that are made and the big contracts that are given out this offseason, which is going to be through the heart of Patrick Mahomes' prime in the middle of his career. So with the Chiefs having quite a bit of cap space and those losses on the defensive side of the ball with the leadership, in addition to a wide receiver, which they're going to add some sort of wide receiver that we all know, if not 2 of them. But what do you see as far as free agency and just the opportunity that Brett Veach and the Chiefs have to set themselves up for a dynasty type run? I hate using that word because it just triggers everybody, but sustained success throughout Patrick Mahomes' prime.
No, I think you're very right. He is hitting that late 20s stretch where you want to get the best around him. And I think I look at the defense a lot like I looked at the offensive line last year, where it's like, okay, we know what changes need to be made. We know things need retooled. And you mentioned, Frank and Tyrann. I don't think either player will be back next year, but I think they've set this up where they do have the cap space to go be aggressive in free agency and almost quote unquote buy your defense a little bit. I think trusting Spags to say this is the type of player I need, whether that's a kind of a slot safety to replace Honey Badger, a pass rusher to replace Frank Clark, linebacker. I don't worry about replacing Anthony Hitchens. You've spent 2 second-round picks on Willie Gay and Nick Bolton. I think you're okay there, but I would expect, defensive tackle is a sneaky need as well. A couple guys leaving there, so we all expect them to go wide receiver at pick 30. I have to remember they have 1 second, 2/3 because of Ryan Poles going to Chicago. So they do have a little more draft capital than we're used to seeing as well, to where they could potentially, draft the defensive end in the second round. It's a really deep group. They could draft a corner or a safety in the third round. I think, a player that a lot hinges on, which I think people would have scoffed at a year ago, is what does Ward do? Does he come back? What kind of money is he going to get on the open market? Because if Ward leaves, you're looking at replacing 2 starters in the secondary and 2 very important starters in the secondary. So I think, I said this last offseason and people got really mad at me, was that the Chiefs roster is not as secure as people think. You have your cornerstones but around those 4-star players, there's going to be a lot of revolving doors, and there's a lot of pressure on this front office to not only hit in the draft, but to hit in free agency and continue to find guys like L'Jarius Sneed and Creed Humphrey, and to find starters outside the first round. Trey Smith is a great example of that. This is another year where Veach and his crew really have to hit on mid round and day 3 picks.
I brought this up and I'm asking you because I know that you, like I said, you've got your ear to the ground and kind of the personalities beyond just watching tape on guys. You talk to people that know the players and their personalities and how they are. Because I've been making this point all offseason that, it's, the business of the NFL. There's guys who are going to come, they're going to go. And when you lose Anthony Hitchens, Frank Clark, and Tyrann Mathieu, it's not just the leadership, the veteran, all those cliche people roll their eyes when they hear me talk about it. Those 3 guys have completely different personalities, and we're all completely different kinds of leaders that were very necessary inside of any room for any team. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a high school football team, you need guys like Anthony Hitchens that just do everything the right way. They keep their mouth like, for the most part, he just doesn't say a lot, keeps his mouth shut, and just does everything. He's the example. He always has the right answer. If you ever have any questions, you need something, you go to Hitch, and he'll take care of you. Tyrann, things are going bad, he's going to get everyone to shut the hell up. Like, he's an alpha amongst alphas. And Frank was the crazy one who's going to play through everything. And you're never going to question his desire to go out there and play. And I know that from personal experience. So those 3 things you have to replace. And a lot of people I see on social media, and I try not to get triggered, and they're like, this is your Tyrann Mathieu replacement. And it's like, on the field, fine, but don't diminish what that means in an NFL locker room with those egos and those personalities, to have somebody that can stand up and kind of wear it publicly the way that he did, which is valuable, inside an actual locker, but the dynamics that actually are real. And then somebody that can check a teammate, check a coach. That's a very, very tricky thing to find. And it's not just go take Jalen Petrie and he's going to be Tyrann's personality. It's a personality, right? It's a personality type thing. So my question for you is, I'm not going to say who's the next Tyrann Mathieu in that regard, because that's not fair. It's like comparing somebody to Aaron Donald on the field. Like, just don't do that. But from a leadership standpoint, who are some of the players that carry those characteristics of a Tyrann Mathieu, where 3-4 years down the road, he could be somebody you would consider a leader of a defense?
Yeah, I think Daxton Hill, and you mentioned a lot of people say, oh, here's your Honey Badger replacement. I think people say that in terms of scheme fit and athleticism, what he brings to the table. But I also think from a leadership perspective, like, the Michigan coaches just rave about him. Christian Harris, who's a linebacker from Alabama. Again, linebacker is probably not an area that's going to be drafted early, but he's definitely someone that if Nick Saban trusts you, I usually tend to trust you, right? That's a pretty good rule. Yeah. But I think, to be completely honest with you, this is the time of year where I start figuring that stuff out. We're 50 days from the draft, so I have my grades on players based on tape, and we're coming out. Combine data is there for the most part, even though most people didn't do anything. So you start to put that piece of the puzzle together. So you've got film, you've got athletic ability. Now it's okay, who are the people in this draft? Who are the red flags? Medical, who are the red flags? maybe character, work ethic. You try to figure that out, just the same as if I worked in an NFL front office. So next 50 days are all about learning who these guys are in terms of, there's people character and there's football character. And you know this very well. It's trying to figure out, exactly who's who right now.
It's amazing how quickly you can figure that out once you've been around a little bit and you talk to the guys. You can figure out what makes them tick and what makes them go. And even as rookies, you're gonna be like, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if this guy's gonna be here in a couple of years. The things that he's talking about now that he's here, and lo and behold, a couple of those guys, even second, third round picks, not gonna put anybody on blast, but it's very obvious to see.
Do you want to be a football player or do you want to play football? There's a difference. Mm-hmm. You want to be a football player, you're going to get rich, you're going to get Instagram followers, you're going to get girls. You want to play football, it's because you love the game and you can't imagine doing anything else. And that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for people who want to play football, not be football players. And feel free to steal that if you're listening. But when you're watching on Sundays, on Saturdays, whenever it is, I think you could tell a difference. I mean, I coached high school football and you could tell guys who wanted to be on the football team and guys who wanted to play football. And I want guys who want to play football.
Yeah. There's a lot of different ways to it. I always say, do you like the game of football or do you like that you're good at football? Do you like being the biggest, baddest athlete on the planet or on your team or on the field? All of a sudden you step on a field with another one of those guys, and some guys, it's not quite as fun. So
absolutely,
you got to sort through those things. But Matt, before we let you go, I know just got one more minute, one last question here, but I want to give you a chance to talk about the player that you actually plugged last night in North Dakota State's Christian Watson, who you have mocked, could change 12 times between now and the draft. I'm sure it will, especially through free agency. But what is it that you like about Christian Watson and how would he fit the Chiefs?
Well, I think he's a unique player. He's 6'4", 210 pounds, and there were times he was lining up in the backfield or taking handoffs. So when I watched North Dakota State, it was just they wanted the ball in his hands. It was how can we get Christian the ball? But to be 6'4" and run, I think 4.39 at the combine. I don't remember the official time now, but it's elite athleticism on a frame that is very different from what the Chiefs have. So you look at, Byron Pringle's a free agent. Marcus Robinson's a free agent. We've talked so much about they don't necessarily need someone to step in and be a wide receiver one right now, but they do need a weapon. And so I think with Watson, you're getting somebody who's a little bit better in the red zone because of size, the one has been on the roster. I think he's much more consistent than some of the secondary receivers that have been on the roster, but you're still getting that threat of speed. And that is so important to this offense. So there's been a lot of demand for bigger wide receivers. Pat needs weapons in the red zone, but they want speed so much that it's been rare to find someone that actually gives you both. But I do think Watson does.
And last thing I'll say before we let you go, and give you a chance again, thank you to Jack Stack Barbecue, our presenting sponsor. No, you're a huge fan of Jack Stack and all the good barbecue in Kansas City. But if you are out there, whether you live in Kansas City or you live outside of the Kansas City metro, Jack Stack's got you covered at shipjackstackbbq.com. They will take care of you, dry ice that stuff to you, and it tastes just as good if you go to any of the 7 locations around Kansas City. They've got happy hours set up between 4 and 6, Monday through Friday, with all kinds of good specials. But Matt, when talking about wide receivers in Kansas City, you know as well as anyone that it's the mental acuity to understand route combinations and concepts if you're going to join the Kansas City Chiefs. So when it comes to people out there listening and mocking players to the Chiefs, and I know it's a hard part of the evaluation for people on the outside to kind of get answers to, but when the Chiefs call plays, a lot of times it is not a route. It is you go line up, you see where everybody is, and that determines what your responsibility is on that play. And so that puts a lot mentally on these players to understand not just their role, but how they fit into the giant scheme. So if receivers may be really talented, great athletes, if they don't understand the game at that level, Andy Reid's going to figure it out. Brett Veach is going to figure it out very quickly throughout this process, and they will be written off. They will be crossed off. Be like, he cannot get this. Yeah. So,
first question, what did they run in the 40? Second question, how many different receiver positions did you play in college? Right? And then go from there.
Yep, absolutely. Well, ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller, we thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you will be back soon, but give you a quick chance to plug. What do you have coming up? How can people support the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, ESPN Plus is where my content lives by and large now. I'll be doing a lot of TV for them as well. Hopefully getting back in the podcast space very soon. But best way to support right now, follow on Twitter at NFL Draft Scout if people aren't already. And then when you see that link come through on an article, click it and check it out. I'll be doing a lot of mock drafts, player scouting reports, reporting on free agency. So it's kind of allowed me to do a lot of new things that I'm pretty excited about.
Awesome. Well, anybody who's been following us, following me, knows your name at least, and then we sit down and we talk a few times each year. We've been doing that for the last decade, so it's always a pleasure, my friend. Hopefully, we can see each other soon. Go grab a beer at Boulevard or something, and all
always,
that. But
always down for that.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We'll have more content throughout this week. And as the Chiefs get closer to free agency, we appreciate all your support, not just for our Chiefs content, but everything we have going on at KC Sports Network. Just launched our Kansas City Royals channel. Hopefully that means there's baseball impending here in the future. A lot of cool stuff with the KU channel coming up as well, including that live show tomorrow down at the College Basketball Experience with Tyshawn Taylor and maybe Sharon Collins. Could be joining us depending upon that weather, but should be a lot of fun. Matt Miller, we appreciate it, man, and we will see everybody soon.